So, we have a black topic to talk about.
With a lot of gray matter.
Oh, that's pretty good. It's a funster.
Hi, I'm Debbie,
I'm Curtis.
and we've been full-timing since July 2022 in our 250 RDS titanium trailer made by
Outdoors RV.
Outdoors RV. Today we wanted to talk to you about maintaining black and gray tanks.
Crappy subject.
It is a crappy subject with a lot of gray areas.
Ha. Pun master.
So on our travels this year, it has been shocking how many people do not use their black tank. They're afraid to use their black tank. It just grosses them right out. So we encounter that a lot.
We have. And the thing is too, is for us, we love having access to our trailer. When we're traveling, we'd rather use our own bathroom than ever use public restrooms, or especially in Canada, the typical pit toilets and
If you don't use your black tank, I'm hoping that maybe some of the information we give you today will maybe alleviate some of the fears of using it and maybe remove some of the grossness. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Dealing with your waste is not fun. And then when you come from sticks and bricks, whether you're on city sewer or you're on a septic sewer, you kind of don't have to deal with any of that. But when you are in a trailer, an RV, you are dealing with it steady. And so we're going to give you some tips as to how we deal with it.
For sure. So if you're new to us, please subscribe, click that like button, and feel free to comment. We'll get back to you as soon as we can, and we welcome your comments.
Yeah, you can also go onto our website, nextchapterstartsnow.com, and there's a newsletter there. And the newsletter is always more up to date. It's more real time, whereas sometimes our videos are lagging 2-3 weeks behind because of just traveling and editing and the rest of it.
So don't worry, we won't spam you. We won't sell your email. It's just for us and just for you.
Our newsletter goes out every Friday night with the release of our video, and it just kind of gives you an update as to what's going on, and sometimes it lets you in the loop of other things that are not mentioned in the video.
Yeah, for sure.
So we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get at it. Okay, so as we said, we were talking about our gray tanks and our black tanks and the management of them. And so you automatically think that, well, that's all outside stuff. But it all begins inside our trailers as to how we use and abuse them. One of the big things is how we treat our sinks. And our sinks are not meant to have stuff go down them. Food bits and grease and dairy and all of that stuff. That is bad for your tank. And the reason why is it will just completely and utterly coat your gray tank. And then you start having issues with smell and grossness. When we're outside, we'll talk about the different opinions of having your gray tank open or closed when you're on full hookups. We mostly dry camp, and so we keep our tank closed, and we also keep our tanks closed when we're at an RV park, and we'll explain those reasons later. But one thing that we do is we use a ton of paper towel. It's not environmentally friendly, I can't say that it is, but it saves our tank. So everything gets wiped with either paper towel or a damp cloth before we wash it in our sink. This is to alleviate chunks going down our drain. The other thing is grease. I have a grease can that everything that is greasy gets poured into that can, and then I throw away the can later. You do not want grease going down your sink. You also do not want anything gross going down your toilet. Well, I guess there's a lot of gross stuff that goes down your toilet, but what you don't want is your kitchen stuff going down your toilet. So maybe in your sticks and bricks home, if you have something really gross, you put it in the toilet and flush it down. You can't do that in your RV. You do not want greasy items going down. In our first 8 months of being in our trailer, Curtis put roast strippings down our toilet, and I still can't get that all completely cleaned out of the tube. I think the only way I'm going to deal with that is Curtis is going to have to pull the toilet and I'm going to have to clean the inside. I do scrub down the tube that goes down into our tank, and that's to keep it from getting funky and building up odors. And also, if that gets really funky with buildup, it will start affecting how your valve works on your toilet, which then could lead to leaking, which then will lead to more water usage and possibly your black tank overflowing. Okay, so toilet maintenance. And this is gross, and I agree it's gross. And I debated whether to show that I do this. But the reason why I do this is because on Changing Lanes with Chad and Tara, they showed inside toilet maintenance. And so they showed down this pipe. And theirs was green and funky. And that just rooted me right out. So then now it's become part of my monthly maintenance is I deal with cleaning down that pipe. First of all, I turn off the water pump or the outside water source. I have a toilet scrubber. Now this part is important. My toilet scrubber is one piece. This head does not remove, and that's extremely important because you do not want the head falling off down inside your black tank and it'll block it. So this is all one piece, and I'm very, very careful with it. I have an elastic on the end. The elastic fits over my wrist. I cannot drop my toilet brush down the toilet. I take my bathroom cleaner. I spray down in the hole on the sidewalls. This little rubber valve gets grunged up and gross, so I clean that first. And then I do the dirty deed of putting my brush in there. I pull it up so that it's cleaning underneath that valve. And then I clean down the toilet. I turn on the water again. And then I rinse. And then I fill up the bowl a couple of times to flush the cleaner out of that tube. So I don't put food down our toilet. I don't put leftover spaghetti down our toilet. I don't put sauce down our toilet. I don't put anything but what comes out of our bodies down our toilet. And that's just to keep everything proper. You don't want to start putting stuff down there that is going to clog things up and potentially clog up your black line, and then you can't drain your black tank. And that's a whole other level of grossness. Something to mention is that when you wash your floor, you don't want to pour your dirty mop bucket water down your toilet. And the reason why, inevitably, it's going to be full of sand. You do not want sand to land in your black tank. That is going to create problems down the road. So when you mop your floors, dump your bucket outside. Do not want grit and sand and grossness in your black tank. You will cause problems with your valves, and you will cause problems with it not flushing properly. Okay, start again.
From the very beginning?
Yep.
Really? I'm waiting for a cut or a little thing that slides down.
Oh, I'd like to do a guillotine right about now.
Okay, we're going to talk about this crappy situation. So really dealing with our black tanks, but also want to talk about the gray tanks. There is some controversy on the gray tanks with dealing with your gray, whether you leave the valve closed and you dump it when your gray tank is full, or you leave the valve open and have it flow all the time. Some people say if you leave it open, it'll leave all the chunks behind and everything else, and I have a tendency to agree with that, because if you think of the water flowing down a tank, it's going to leave all the solids, the bits and foods behind. But if you leave that valve closed and then you open up the valve, it'll take it and flush it as the water rushes out. That makes a lot of sense to me. They say that if you leave it closed, you can have a lot of calcium buildup, and which is not good for your tank, but also not good for your sensors. The fact is our sensors haven't worked, Debbie, for how long?
I think they worked the first 6 months of us owning the trailer, but everywhere that we travel is extremely hard water. So one of the funny things about doing videos like this is a how-to video. And for everything that we've shown for how to flush your tanks and to dump your tanks and all that, absolutely. But when it comes to things like chemicals and things that you use in your trailer, your RV, it gets to be a little bit touchy. I'm also, not a chemist. And so I have to put a little bit of a disclosure out there that this is what I do. You can choose to do it or not. but I'm not an expert. I hope that is clear. So this is my product lineup. CLR is my go-to for anything that is clogged from hard water. So if I need to descale a tap, I need to descale my toilet, I need to descale anything like a sink, surface, whatever, CLR is my go-to. It is also my go-to if I wanted to descale my gray waste tank. I would do a mild mixture in there and let it sit if I figured I was having a hard water buildup, which we are in a lot of areas with extreme hard water. My second go-to is Calgon and Pine Sol. I mix these two, a cup of each, pour it down my drain in my kitchen, and that goes down. The Calgon will soften hard water, similar to what the CLR does, and the Pine Sol will degrease everything and will also eliminate any odors that there may be down in the tank. Sometimes when you walk into your trailer and you get a smell of odor and you think, oh, it's my black tank, check, because sometimes it's the gray tank that can get really funky and stinky. So I would never mix all three of these together. I want to be clear about that. I would either use these two together or I would use this one on its own, never together. This has worked well for us, and it's something that I do once a month, or if I start smelling stuff coming out of the gray tank up through our drains, then I'll take care of it through that. And even just a shot of Pine Sol, I don't like the smell of Pine Sol, but it does work very well even if you just pour a tablespoon into your sink just so that you get the Pine Sol in the trap, and that'll clean everything up in there and make it smell better.
Dealing with brown, a little bit of people will say that, I won't use my black tank. There's no way. I'm not going to the washroom with a black tank. I'll go to the wash house or I'll go to the pit toilet or wherever else. I won't use my black. I don't know why there is this fear, but hopefully this video helps you.
I think people are worried when they hear about things like pyramids, where like they hear stories of people that have left their black tank valve open and therefore you end up with a poop pyramid inside the tank and then it clogs up. Or people have heard the horror stories of people using toilet paper that doesn't break down very well and then that clogs everything all up, or people putting feminine products down the tank, which you never ever do, and that has clogged it up, and people are just terrified of having to deal with a huge mess in their black tank and having to deal with all that brown yuckiness.
And it can be a mess. I kind of instantly think about maybe sometimes the difference between men and women. Jeff Foxworthy nailed it pretty well, didn't he? When he talked about, for a mom, they could be sewage spewing everywhere. She's like, I'm singing in the rain. Something would gag the rooter man. She's just fine with it.
That's because we have to.
Yeah, because you have to. Now, for this year, I find that if I'm careful, make sure all my fittings are connected and everything else, and I have a good connection outside there, I've taken the time to thread that piece in there, or definitely going there to stand on it or put a rock on it or something. It's not bad. I mean, it's not freezing weather. There's no real issues for it.
So what would you say is the number one reason that people have problems with their black tanks?
Well, I don't know. I think at one time when people didn't understand them, they would leave them open, and that would be a disaster. I think you only make that mistake once. But I think it's not flushing properly, not taking the time. When you're in a full hookup site like this or a sandy dump, if you're at a sandy dump, if you're set up and everything else, and there's people behind you, you still need to flush. Mm-hmm. And what I look at, if I'm rushed or don't have a lot of time, and I've been camping for weeks without being able to flush properly, I'm going to flush. I mean, it's just the way it is. You have to flush. You also can get the sandy dumps that don't have proper flush ports, like yes. 100 miles like that. You don't have a connection that you can hook up to this. You can't flush that line out properly. So you don't want to go to that one continuously and not be able to flush.
Or you will have a sludge build up in the bottom of your tank. No matter how much water you use when you're flushing, as in inside using your toilet, flushing the toilet. If you don't get to do a proper flush on your tanks, you will end up with a sludge buildup.
For sure. You need to take the time to flush. So I think that's probably the number one thing people don't do properly, if I'm guessing, is that they don't take the time to flush properly.
So as far as user error, Curtis is speaking of what goes on outside. I would say inside, the number one user error is not using enough water to flush the toilet.
Yeah, and I think we were guilty of that way back when, too.
Initially, definitely. We were trying to conserve water because we were boondocking and dry camping. And
yeah, you can't do that.
No.
Just like we'll show you when you go to set back up, What we do on a travel day is we add, say, 3 gallons of water. Once we get to where we're going, we'll add a couple more. So we already have 5 gallons of water in there, plus the chemical we've added right off the hop. But if we're set up, like, going to stay, then we'll just go 5 gallons of water right away. One thing when we do our setup is most states, and I'm not sure about Canada to be honest with you, most states require that you have a rack. And now that's fine. But one thing I noticed that most people do not do, they do not create a gooseneck here. And this creates a P-trap. So basically it's full of water to this level, just like your house net. If you don't do this, if you run it straight across and if you by chance have your valves open, or when you have your valves open, or if you leave them open, which is not recommended, of course, and we'll talk about that. When you have your fans up top there, or your air conditioner up top and that, and it's pulling in cold air, or pulling in air from outside, you're pulling in vented sewer. So you're basically connecting to the system here at the campground, and you have that gas exposed to you. But if you create a P-trap here, the gas can't come back. And that's an important step. And I see almost no one do that. One thing we've added over the last year a bit is we added a couple of these 45-degree clear fittings, and I like it because when we're doing a flush, you can see right there that it's clear. Yeah, I used to go to the end. We had the clear fitting at the end and you used to see it, but the line's full of black while you're doing your flush. So you really don't know how clear you are, but now you can see. And these, I love the 245s because you can change it at any angle. You don't have the pressure of the hose coming through because they often cause stress on these. And I just like it, and they're not expensive. I think it's a great investment. But remember the P-trap. Now the P-trap when you're dumping isn't critical. Sometimes when you first open this up, it wants to push your little racks away. I find if I wedge a rock in there, it doesn't, but I'll often kind of just hold it too. Again, wear gloves. So we're gonna show you a black dump, but when you open this valve slowly at first, and then pull it open. And now we're threaded at the other end, so we don't have to worry about it, but normally you can walk there. I'll still make sure that we have no issues, no problems, and I'll put my foot on if I have to, which is whatever. But we're only camping here for a couple days, so there's not a lot in the black tank. Normally this black tank, it's running hard, like full on, because we've been camping, maybe we haven't dumped in 4 days or 6 days. So there's a lot of product in there. But so that's your black tank, brown tank.
Now, what about all your fans in the trailer when you pull that black?
Yeah, they need to be all off. And that's one thing we've learned the hard way, is you want to make sure all your fans are off, your air conditioning's off, because it'll draw, because the vent itself now in the black tank, it's working. It's allowing the product to come out of there, which of course, it has to get replaced with air. So air is coming in, but air is all going out. There's the exchange thing happening. So you will have a lot of odor in your trailer. So you make sure all your fans are off and make sure your air conditioning is off, and then open that valve up too. That's a very good point. We use a really good quality toilet paper in here. You don't see any.
No, that's true.
Because part of the thing is that tank is hot. There's a lot of chemical stuff going on in there, a lot of bacteria stuff that's going on in there. It's breaking down that product. That product you put in there also helps break it down. So yeah, if you notice that one advantage of the clear connections here too is you get to see what it is. But normally when we do this, our tanks are quite full and we don't see anything. It's just brown product. That's all it is.
Yeah.
We don't see toilet paper, bits and pieces,
No,
whatever
it's
else.
just dirty water.
Now, if you just use this and you go to do your flush, you may see some toilet paper because that hasn't broken down yet, which makes sense, right?
Right.
So we're going to dump our black and then we're going to flush it out, and we'll show you how we do that.
I have a question. When you pull the valve gate for the black, do you pull it quickly or do you pull it slowly?
No, I pull it slowly. I don't want to ever jam or pull that rod. And even it's just a pretty cheap valve. So you want to make sure you open that valve smoothly. So I pull it a little bit, hear the flow, and then slowly pull it open all the way. If you jam it, you can break the valve or rip the rod out. So just have some gentle hands with it, I guess is the best way to say it.
Okay.
So now we're dealing with the brown. You know, as gross as this is, there is no toilet paper in here. And even if you use the bathroom just now, you know, or just before you did this, you may see some solids because it hasn't had a chance to break down yet. But it breaks down fast if you have a proper tank. And the key is to make sure that, and we'll show you what we do when we set ours up after a flush. Okay, one thing we found that works well is this TST Max. Now there's a regular concentration stuff too that doesn't seem to work as well. This Max is a concentrated product. It works really well. We've tried the pucks. Those little drop-in little things, little drop-in dissolving TSTs, same company, but we haven't had luck with it. So this liquid stuff we found, and it comes in different
Scents.
scents.
There's a lavender one, which is
whatever.
enough to vomit.
We just kind of stayed with this one, but we found this works well. It's good for up to 7 days, but if it's hot outside, these things start to work well, building up bacteria and all that too, but also odor. And we found that if we keep up on it and do it every 3-4 days when we're boondocking extended times in tanks, it seems to work well for controlling the odor. But if you lose it and it starts to smell, we have found, no matter what you put in there, that odor's not going away. You gotta drop. You have to do your...
And flush.
Yes, yeah. So if you can control, but we found this works very, very well. Maybe you found a better product that you like. Let us know in the comments. So what you use and what you like. But we found this works well. So I don't measure it. I just kind of estimate it. I put a couple ounces in it. Now when it comes to how much you put in there, what we do, if we're traveling down the road, we'll do about 3 gallons of water in there. But if we're stationary, especially with hookups, is we'll put about 5 gallons in there. And we don't worry much about being very conservative. We used to, and it doesn't work. You want to have... Go ahead and add your
When
comment
you're
there.
flushing your toilet, you cannot conserve water. You have to use enough water to flush the solids down and to give enough water in the tank to cover the solids, or else it dries out and gets sludgy and gets very disgusting, and that's a whole trouble in itself.
It can be. And of course you never leave your black open ever, otherwise you can get a gross comment. They call it a poo pyramid.
And the
so,
only way to solve it is usually with a stick.
Yeah, Duffy.
Yeah.
Heck. So, but again, we're dry camping. We have no hookups right now because we shot that earlier one with hookups, and now we're just showing you putting the chemical in because we actually forgot to put it in before we travel, which we seldom forget. But we got busy doing that little video. I got busy breaking down and
Talking with the neighbor and...
Yeah, the typical camp stuff, not doing the full checkout
Yeah.
and things.
That's
So,
one thing to note when you're packing up. If someone comes and talks to you, or when you're setting up,
yeah.
take a moment to stop after you talk to them and go through the mental checklist, because we all have our routines as to how we do this. And if someone interrupts it, inevitably we're going to forget something and miss a step.
Like this. So not a big deal. We only had a short travel day.
But it could be that you forgot to put your chains on, or you forgot to put the pin in the hitch.
Yeah, that's another topic in itself, but it's a good point, because when we're doing the hitch stuff, if we're both doing it, we always make sure that we're not gabbing during it. We're just doing our main points and everything else too. Like you said, if you get interrupted or whatever,
Start all over.
yeah, make sure and do the double check when you do your walkthrough. Just look at everything and make sure you got your cap on your sewer and all those things.
It's the same with your sanitary. When you're done dumping, make sure you do your walk around. If you get interrupted, really make sure you do your walk around.
Yeah, otherwise you see the guys dragging the stinky slinky halfway out the road there. And,
I've done it once, pulling out and not realizing I left my back door open and my steps down, because someone started talking to me when I was doing the Sandy dump. A line piled up behind me, and then I went to pull out and went, oh my goodness. So it can happen.
It can happen. Even if you do it every day, it can still happen. So
don't break routine.
No, very true. So that's dropping it, and now let's hook up our flush. We'll show you in the video at a Sandy dump. You're obviously using the Sandy dump hoses. Now this is a piece of contention, and some keyboard warriors may go, oh, you should never do this, you should never do this. We're set up in an RV park, and two options you have. One is you can take your dedicated hose, your flush hose, like what you would do when you're at a Sandy dump or that, and you can connect it to the water line. I personally don't like the concept of taking a sanitary line and connecting it over here to a hose bib side of things, because I'm potentially bringing in bacteria to the hose bib area, which is somebody else is going to come and connect, just like we did, to the fresh water. So I use our freshwater hose and connect to the flush port, but I have a procedure that I do, A very careful procedure I do, and of course I do disinfecting afterwards of my hose end before I connect it back to my line.
Can you show me the brass valves that you have?
Yeah, you bet. So these are just a standard brass valve. We'll show you, put a link in there. But the difference is most times people use the 90s here, they don't have a shutoff valve. Now I put these brass valves with the shutoff valves on them because even though inside here has a check valve and you should have nothing come back in the check valve, I don't know if that check valve is functioning 100% or not. But with this brass valve, I have 2 levels of protection. One, I have a shutoff. Secondly, I have a check valve. When I bring my hose on here, I connect my hose. I shut the water off, obviously, disconnect it here, connect my hose on here, turn the water on, get the pressure here, then I turn this valve open, and now I'm flowing this way. When I go to disconnect, I shut this valve off, shut the line off, and then I crack the line, bleed the water out, and that way I'm not really having a chance for anything to come back.
Right, because the water's under pressure. When you turn it off, nothing can flow backwards.
Exactly. So I do that step for a reason. I leave these valves on when I travel because if you look, there's everything else that's hanging out too, and it doesn't hang out past where anything is. So I just leave them on there, put the cap on. But again, I'll make sure when I'm putting things through, I disinfect this, I disinfect my end of my hose and make sure, and I put some bleach down that line, a little bit of chlorine bleach down the line. I spray there again to make sure that I'm not contaminating my drinking water hose. Now again, some people may say that's a terrible way, but I think it's better than connecting a hose that you haven't dealt with at all. And you've done it, used it at sandy dumps, you've used it wherever else. I mean, that truly is a hose full of bacteria. So.
Well, and I guess that's the thing that people think of. They think of the safety to their own unit, but they don't think of the safety to the water spigot. So this water spigot, we've seen people take their black hose, their sewer hose, and bring it right up to the water tap and rinse it out right against the spigot and touch it and then drive away. And the next person pulls in and hooks up their fresh water line to that spigot, and they've just put fecal matter back into their own water tank.
Yeah, that's bad stuff.
We always carry a spray bottle with bleach and water in it, and that's what we use to sanitize everything. We sanitize the spigot before we hook our line up to it. We sanitize our hose, and we sanitize our ports.
Yeah, I have another one of those valves here with the shutoff too, and the reason why I use a shutoff on here is same thing. There is a check valve inside there. I don't want to trust that check valve. I also want to make sure that I can isolate from here because it's easier for me to disinfect from here. It's harder for me to disinfect every time back from here.
Right.
So I make sure I have a valve there too. Plus 90 is better for the hose than it kinking, especially under heat. So it's better off to hang it directly down.
Absolutely.
These are a must-have.
So Curtis will bleach it before he puts it back to our fresh water spigot.
So we have taken some steps. Plus another thing to remember too is that we actually don't drink directly from our system. All our water goes through, and we use a Berkey because we don't want it. We don't know what the status is of the water that's coming here from the municipality, from the RV resort, or wherever it's from. We don't know the last time when they tested this or repaired or
and
whatever.
We've been in RV parks where they've had a broken water line that they've dug up, repaired, filled it back in, and turned the water on to everyone's trailers. And Curtis, this is the industry you work in. Is that how you do it?
No, not at all. It has to be a true tie-in situation where everything has to be swabbed, everything has to be flushed properly, and then again tested afterwards. And if you had a major break, you had to put the community on a boil water advisory until we have a safe test. So yeah, this is what I do for a living, not RVs, but water systems and wastewater systems.
I was in an RV park that had a broken water line 3 times in one winter, and every time they dug it up, the line sat in mud, and then they filled it back in, and
big dirt flushes out.
Big dirt flushes, and everyone drank it.
Even though we're leaking right now on this hose bib, it doesn't show very well, but make sure you have a filter of some kind, because you want to make sure you capture all of that sand and stuff too that's in the system rather than getting into your RV, especially if you have demand hot water systems now. You want to make sure you're taking some steps. So here we are flushing, and we're starting to get some of the sludge that's out of there. There you go. There's a lot of the solids and stuff that came through. And what I do is usually on a tear down day, I leave that valve open, so our black is open, our third valve that we have is open, and I'll just let that flush for quite a while, and I'll go start packing up and doing other things. And then I come along here once that thing's running clear, and then I'll close the black valve. You can use, if you're worried about it, you can use a water meter, And you can put a little meter on there. I'll tell you how many gallons you put in. And then that way you don't have to worry about causing a disaster inside. But what I do, my rule is I close it based on the pressure and based on the flow. And then I open it back up real quick. And then when I fill it, what I'm doing is just trying to get more water in there and then get that big flow out of there to be able to do the flush again. The sprayers work well, as you can see, but it works much better to do both.
Now, tell me what happens if you walk away from this and you forget.
With the valve closed,
Yep.
it floods out inside from the toilet. That'd be beyond a disaster.
Yeah, you would have then flushed out your black tank into your trailer.
Yeah, that'd be really, really bad. So you never want to walk away distracted, or someone comes around, open that valve up, let it flow, or shut the water off. You know, it's easy again. You can just shut the water off here again. You leave the line under pressure, no big deal. And what we find when we're on full-time hookups, you know, this winter we're pretty much on full-time hookups. I was dumping our black about every 4 days. You know, so if we're there for a week, whatever else, I dump on day 4, and then today's a travel day for us. So this is the dump, and I want to make sure I give it a really good flush. So that way when we put that 3 gallons of water in there with that little bit of chemical, while we're driving down the road, it's helping to clean our tank too, right?
Absolutely.
Get that last little bit of flush out of there. So you'll see some chunks coming out. So it's still flushing. As gross as it is. But I think the thing is like, what's the harm? Yeah, I'm gloved up. That's it. And I'm gloved up. I take my gloves off and I'm going to deal with the hose again because that's our water line. But I glove up here because I don't know, when I was touching fittings and touching valves, I'd just rather make sure that I'm protected here. And when I'm all done this, the gloves go away, but I still clean my hands with sanitizer. We have sanitizer right in our bay. And plus we have Lysol wipes in the truck. So it looks like we have good clean water. And again, it was only been 5 days since we've done a flush. So we're not too worried about our system. Yeah, a little bit came out there again.
And like Curtis said, it's whether the water is clear or not. The fact that a little bit of toilet paper or whatever comes out, that's not a big deal because the tank is clean now. Those are just a little bit of things that'll get taken care of in the next dump.
It'll break down.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll show you how we disconnect our line now. Key is, like I said, I'm going to take the gloves off. We're going to shut this valve off here. We're going to shut our hose bib off.
So when Curtis did that, the water is all stopped here.
So
It
she's
shut off,
pressurized.
so nothing could come back.
And now we're going to crack our line.
This is where Curtis normally gets sprayed.
Yes. Okay, and I'm going to take our line. I'm going to drain out some of our line. I'll show you why I do that. I don't want the water level at the top, otherwise I can't put any chlorine bleach down there. So Debbie just does a mixture here. Basically a few tablespoons of bleach, which we're getting pretty low on. So we got some chlorine bleach down the line, all around the fittings, everything else. Then I'm fine to go back. So again, if you're done with your line, you could disconnect, but I always reconnect it because I want to get some chlorine bleach in there. And that way, everything I've dealt with, my hose is disinfected basically, I guess the best way to say it. I got that valve off here. I'm going to turn the hose bib back on, pressurize it. Make sure I don't have any leaks. Obviously, I know I have a leak here this morning. For whatever reason, that filter didn't want to tighten up when I connected to here. So there we go. We're back on. And we got, our trailer has this, which works out pretty good. We can crack a line here a little bit. Get that
And that
flowing.
just pulls it through the system, right?
Yeah. So now,
We highly recommend that when you pull into a campsite,
yeah.
you spray bleach on the outside and inside your water spigot and then run it a little bit and then put a little more bleach back in there because it is disgusting what people do with
Yeah.
their water.
That's a good point. I do that every time. And when I connect to, when I put my filter on, I crack that line after I've done what Debbie just said and run water out of my filter. Then I connect my line up And I flush my hose out every time, because if it's been really hot and that water's been sitting in the truck or wherever else, I don't want that going into the trailer.
No.
I want to be able to flush that line. So flush the line out from the source. And again, we don't drink this water. And we also disinfect our lines and stuff too, but that'll be another video what we do there.
Yeah, and you disinfect your hose before you fill up your freshwater tank as well.
Yeah, for sure. Good point. And yeah, if you go to one of those places like your sandy dumps that also have water, and if it has a hose, same concept, right?
We watched a guy hook up a hose to the fresh water, run it back to his Sani, and stick the hose inside the hose.
Yeah, so don't trust that situation. Again, it's also why we have a Berkey, just saying. So now that I have that done, we're gonna close our black valve, and we're gonna open up our gray. Same thing, we're gonna pull the gray fairly soft, and then pull it wide open. That's the flush I'm talking about. So that gray, even though it's gray, even though it's dishwater and shower water, whatever else.
It's washing all the brown chunks out.
That's right. Plus we flush for a long time too. But that is 3 inches of water head that is flushing out that line. So that line is clean. And then once this is done, we'll close our gray valve and we're good to put that line away. I don't take the hose and go inside there, no way, no how. Because that to me, that's not good. That flushes it.
Yeah. We also have caps that go on the end of our hose. We don't put our hose into our bin with the ends open, because that leads to stuff leaking out in your bin, and I mean that's
It's still
funky,
gray. It's
foul,
still
gross.
It's bacteria.
Yeah.
So yeah, we cap everything. Good point. Now we're safe. So let us know what you think, what you do when it comes to flushing your line and keeping others safe and yourself safe. Let us know if you found a better way. We'd love to be able to know, but this is definitely what we do and the best thing we found so far. Okay.
Hey, today is doing the sunny dump.
One of the things for some etiquette there too is while you're waiting in the staging line like we were, make sure you open your cabinets up or wherever it is you keep your gloves. So just be prepared. So that way, if you have a bin, pull that bin out, maybe throw it in the deck of the truck or whatever. The more prepared you are, the faster it's going to move along the line. Right now we have no one behind us, so that's nice.
It's a good day to film because there is no one behind us.
Yeah. So we're just doing the Sani dump here for black and gray. Obviously we had no connections at this state park. This is such a great thing having the tube right here. This makes life really easy and simple and quick.
And clean.
So we got caps on everything, which makes life nice. If it's a pay station, different story. You obviously have to pay. Make sure you pay before you throw that thing in there, otherwise you can waste yourself $5 or $10 or $20 depending on where you are. We have a third valve, which we've been leaving just open. A bit of a block here, so either a rock or a block, always good to hold it down. We're gonna dump our black, pull that handle out, just pull it out slowly as you go, and then give it a good pull. Then I always come here right away with my foot. I'm ready, making sure that it's not gonna pop out. We only had last night, so there's not that much.
Yeah, our black is not full at all.
If it's full, there's a lot of force on that line.
And you want to make sure that you block that, or it can pop out and be a heck of a mess.
Yeah. They do have a flush line, but we're not going to flush today because we only were one day. We'll show you flushing from on site, which is something. A lot of these ones that you come to don't have this threaded connection, and they're designed oftentimes just to flush out your line. That doesn't make it any good if you've been wanting to flush out your sanitary system itself, but this one here does have it. But it's a short hose, so you have to use yours or back up a lot.
This is at Cattail Cove State Park in Arizona,
It's beautiful here.
just south of Havasu City.
Okay, I'm not going to get carried away because we're only just overnighting one night again. So close that.
We're going boondocking for one night, and then we are going to Needles KOA, and there's where we will do a big flush.
We there's our gray line open again. Just pull that valve. So you're doing the black first, obviously, because you want to use the gray water to flush out your black.
A lot more sanitary.
Well, and you're not packing a really dirty, what do they call them? Dirty slinkies?
Stinky slinkies.
Stinky slinkies.
So Curtis is going to show us how he hooks up stuff for pumping into the tanks in the back of the truck.
So we purchased a Maciator through Amazon, like always. And this simply is just a 12-volt pump there. I have a harness that I hook up to and then go into the battery. It used to be able to connect to the battery in the front there, but it's not there now. But we're going to actually wire power over to here so that way we don't have to worry about running connection over there. So quite simply, that's that. Open up your bypass, or open up your secondary valve, and then pull your black or your gray.
Okay, and this pumps into the back of the truck. Do you have to use this to get it out of the truck?
No, because you just push this either into the gray bladder there, or we push it into our sewer tote.
Camco Rhino poop tote?
Yeah, the poop wagon.
Poop wagon, as we call it.
So anyways, they spec that you're supposed to use a 3/4 inch hose. And so I just purchased a 3/4 inch hose online. And I picked a black hose to make it look like it truly would never be mixed up with water.
That's good, because that would be disgusting.
Yeah, that would be. So this thing works really well. It does have a flush port on it, but I quite simply don't use it. I just actually use our outdoor shower attachment carefully with the hose to flush it out at the end there. But we always do our black first and then open up our gray, and then that way it's just gray water flushing this out and flushing the line out before we put it into the bladder. So black only goes into our little
Poop tote?
and then the gray, top up the rest of it with gray, and then gray only into that bladder.
And these bladders have been awesome from Amazon.
Yeah, they work really well. So to dump it, I just kind of pull that wagon out to the edge and hook up a normal standard sewer hose. I did my vent cap. You've probably noticed I have that clear 90 on top of the tank there. It's easy to see when it's almost full. And the gray bladder, that one, I just normally leave that in the truck and then run that same garden hose out that I fill it with. That's a 3/4 inch hose that I run into your sandy dump there. But right now there's hardly anything in it because there wasn't much left in the gray tank, so it was easy to lift out without damaging the bag and just drain it out. So that is how I dump it. Yeah, I hope this holds too. If not, give Cousin Eddie a call.